Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Global ESCO Network on the International Energy Efficiency Finance Protocol developed by EVO, the Efficiency Evaluation Organization. My name is Søren Nytken. I'm the chairman of the Global ESCO Network. I'm also the finance advisor for UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, where the Global ESCO Network is hosted together with EVO. The Global ESCO Network is a network of networks. It's a network consisting of ESCO associations around the world. We have 35 partners, which is about 90% of the ESCO associations that we have been able to identify. Those are in the countries that are marked here with green. The blue are those that are not partners of the Global ESCO Network yet. And the gray areas are there where we haven't found ESCO associations yet. We also help establishing those ESCO associations when we can. So we consider it 39 partners, potential partners, and counting. The Global ESCO Network is guided by an advisory board of 6. The advisory board is currently working on a set of pieces of policy advice that covers different areas of the functionality of ESCOs, one of which is also the financing of ESCOs, and that's today's focus of the webinar. We're not looking into the policy advice per se. We will come back to that once the policy advice is ready, but we're looking into the financing aspects of ESCOs. As we are hosted by the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, the Global ESCO Network is born with a climate change focus. And energy efficiency has in fact always delivered some of the best returns on investment in emissions reduction. That doesn't mean though that they have been easy to finance. In fact, energy efficiency is probably the hardest emissions reduction activity to finance, and the financing of energy service companies may be even harder. There are reasons for that, and not all of them are good, but one of the main ones is that the business does not conform to banks' traditional project evaluation criteria. And another is that regulators rarely understand the business. Now, what have regulators to do with it? Well, regulators oftentimes enter into the sector in order to promote energy efficiency, but when they do so, they disregard the ESCO. They consider the ESCO as a private sector activity that does not need any government support, but those that do not have energy efficiency focus need an incentive to bring about investments in energy efficiency. So in fact, governments put up competition to the private sector by providing grant schemes that exclude the ESCO from access. What they also do is that they take a single technology approach. So it may be that it's a grant scheme for efficient air conditioners or for heat pumps, which have been very popular over the past winter here in Europe. But mainly the misunderstanding that behind these grant schemes is that they believe that investment in energy efficiency in fact needs grant funding. And it doesn't, because it delivers quite good returns on investment. So in fact, what they do is they're sugarcoating the cherry and they leave the pie untouched. Today's presentation on the International Energy Efficiency Finance Protocol takes a market-based approach. Energy efficiency and ESCOs, in fact, do not need grant funding, but they do need the banking sector to be an active partner that understands the business. And that is what the IEEFP is developed to achieve. I would like to hand over the microphone to Denis Tanguy from EVO for the presentation of the protocol, and look forward to the questions and answers after the session. You have a chat. You can submit your questions while Denis is speaking. So over to you, Denis.
Thank you, Søren. Now, technology issues. Can you see my screen?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, and I'm just trying to reduce my other screen. Sorry, technologies this morning. I just want to make sure that I'm not cutting anything. Do you see my camera or on the screen, or just the screen itself?
Just the screen, not as a full screen.
Okay, there we go. So thanks, Søren, for the introduction and the opportunity to present a broad discussion on the International Energy Efficiency Financing Protocol, one of EVO's protocol that has been on the shelves for many, many years now, that we resurrected a few years ago. Just a few words on EVO, for those on the call who don't know us. EVO is the home of the IPMVP, the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol. We were created 22 years ago as a non-for-profit corporation to continue, maintain, and disseminate the good news about measurement and verification and the IPMVP. We're led by volunteers from around the world. Presently, over 100 people are involved in our various committees. And essentially, our mission is to make sure that people have confidence in energy efficiency as a reliable and sustainable energy resource, and ensure that the savings are measured and verified in a proper manner. At the bottom of the screen, you can see our partners, training partners, mostly around the world. We will have a few more logos to add later this week, at least one, which is an ESCO association. I won't say more for now. And there's going to be another major announcement in May as well for another partners. A short history of the IPMVP. It was created in 1996 as a North American Energy Measurement and Verification Protocol. And the year after, it became international because a lot of people around the world showed interest. And then it was updated 8 times since then. And the last time was in last year in March 2022. And it is now known as the IPMVP Core Concepts. It was recently published in Italian and Spanish for Mexico in March of this year. We will release a Brazilian version in May and French probably later this year. And along with the IPMVP, we have a series of application guides on different topics. One of them is on M&V and performance contracting. Essentially, it's outlining some of the issues that different stakeholders should be looking at when they are engaged into an EPC contract. And we have other documents that will be released this year as well, an application guide on advanced M&V, evaluation, measurement, and verification, which is essentially focusing on program evaluation and how the IPMVP can help. An uncertainty assessment guide for those who are really focused on statistics and the need to apply them in their projects. And we have three other guidelines. One of them is coming up next year, or within a year at least, M&V for water, M&V for renewables, and M&V for option Ds, for those who know the 4 option of the IPMVP. These are approximate publication dates. I have no control over that. It's all in the hands of our hundreds of volunteers, but it's that's what's working right now at EVO. We have two other protocols. One of them, which is not really well known, is the third-party equipment certification protocol, and the IEEFP, which will be the focus of the presentation today. Just a few words on the third-party certification protocol. This is more the document presents the rationale for conducting and using third-party equipment performance certification, and it presents some evaluation methods and best practices for specific equipment categories. The goal of this document is like all our document, is a risk reduction tool. It gives an understanding of how of products' performance expectations, and it gets into the picture when you consider financing energy efficiency projects. If you're interested in seeing how the technologies that you're going to finance were approved or tested, this document could be of great help in that context. So that's why I'm raising it today, because I think it's really closely related to the financing of projects. And of course, the IEFP. The IEFP is really a blueprint to help loan risk and credit officers to understand the basics of energy efficiency and really understand how attractive energy efficiency projects loans can be to facility owners, ESCO, and other potential developers and implementers of energy efficiency projects. It is complemented by specific country annexes covering local regulation, and this is very important because if we talk about concepts that do not apply due to regulation purposes in some countries, well, it's of no use. So right now we have country annexes available for Canada and Mexico, and we're working on a few others, including Italy and Tunisia. And we're quite willing to develop as many country annexes that will be needed. These annexes are not really complex. Sometimes they could be only 2 or 3 pages or more, but really focusing on the local situation. And we have a hands-on training on how to apply the various tools, project-based templates and material provided in the program that I will explain a little bit later as well. So the big question is, why bother about energy efficiency? I think there are tons of reasons why bothering about energy efficiency, but I guess the most obvious one is climate change and all the declination that we can imagine about climate change. I mean, I've been in this business for close to 35 years now, and I've seen different terminology, but it all comes up to the same thing: is we consume energy, we emit greenhouse gases emissions, we are affecting the climate, and we need to reduce our energy consumption. So if people don't understand that, I guess we have a big gap to fill. But this is I guess the background for the development of the IEFP in 2009. More recently, of course, we have the Paris Agreement, 2015, that is calling for to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Goals that were reiterated in Glasgow in 2021 at COP26, with some warnings, though, that to achieve the 1.5, we're going to need to do more than what we're doing right now. I won't get into the details to that, but we all understand that there is a lot of driving forces behind the interest of financing energy efficiency projects. Just to give you an idea, this is from the Climate Policy Initiative. In 2019-20, we're talking about $633 billion invested in climate finance by public and private institutions, spread almost evenly between public and private at $322 and $311 billion. This is a lot of money, and just to give you another perspective of that, if you put this slide in perspective and shrink it down to the little red circle at the bottom left corner of this slide, you see that to achieve the 1.5 Celsius pathway, we're going to need to multiply this amount by 10 by 2040 annually. So we're talking about $6,000 billion annually to address climate change issues. So if banks do not understand that there's money to be made in energy efficiency, I think this speaks for itself. If you look at carbon emission abatement and the role of energy efficiency, you can see that we're right at the same level as renewable. The one thing I don't like with this slide is the fact that if you consider energy efficiency as reducing energy demand, we're kind of contributing as well to the upper 25%, which is renewable, by reducing the need for more renewables. So the impact of energy conservation and efficiency is probably more than 25% that is showed here. And the same is true partly for electrification in the in unused sectors. So by being more efficient, we impact both the reduced reliance on energy production and by default renewables, and also electrification. So another good reason to do energy efficiency. Why now? Well, tightening of global energy supply. I think 2022 was a reality check, particularly in Europe, where we could see the impact of security of supply that involved price volatility and supply chain disruptions, etc. And it triggered deep concerns about short-term energy savings, but also longer-term efficiency measures and projects. More and more decarbonization is driving the renewed interest for energy efficiency. There is a regulatory response with strict obligations to reduce consumption in many places. In France, for example, you have the Décret Tertiaire, which gives very strict target for energy consumption reduction by 2030. And you will increasingly see that in many other countries. Financial institutions as well are joining the effort with different initiatives. I'm just mentioning one here, which is the PCAF initiative, the Partnership for Carbon Accounting for Financials, which is the development of GHG accounting methodology for financed emission. This is a top-down approach. The IEFP is providing a bottom-up approach, and hopefully the different methods will meet somewhere in the middle. And of course, with all this renewed interest for energy efficiency, there's also a renewed interest for measured and demonstrated savings. More and more project funders require hard evidence that savings are real, and everyone is also looking for risk reductions methodologies. One example of guidelines for banks, this one is from UNEP, April 2021, guidelines for climate targets setting for banks with 4 goals. One is banks shall set long-term and intermediate targets to support how they meet the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. 2, that they shall establish emission baseline, which is and measure them annually, which is in the MNV ballpark. 3, that they should use widely accepted science-based decarbonization scenarios. And 4, that they should regularly review targets and ensure consistency with current climate science, which is again in the area of MNV. For those who are interested in a more structured presentation on financial institutions and climate change and the need for MNV, I invite you to go on our website. At the top of the website in the menu, look for the MNV Week 2023. And in there, you will find a webinar from last year by Livia Mitke-Moret, from base, which focuses on decarbonization through energy efficiency and achieving net zero targets. And you have the presentation material and the recording, and it's free. So I invite you to really listen to this very interesting webinar. Long-standing global energy efficiency barriers. I could have made like 20 slides, I guess, on this topic. Those who have been in this business for a long time know that, well, there are, I would say, three different categories of barriers. Some of them are economical, like lack of financing options, hidden costs, and perceived higher risk and things like that. Others are behavioral, basically based on an organization continuing to behave the way that they have always done. And other are organizational, like some organizations are not considering energy efficiency at all. So what you see in blue and on the left side of the 12 barriers that could be, as I said, 24, 36, and 48. These are organized and they could be categorized in economical, behavioral, and organizational. On the right side, I put them aside and they belong to the other three categories, but they are also focused on information and imperfect information, asymmetric information, the lack of capacity to interpret the information that is available to stakeholders, and the lack of trust in information sources. The reason why I put them aside on this slide is the IEEFP is really addressing this part of the efficiency barriers, which is focusing on information. Just to expand on two typical barriers, like the apathy of, well, first of all, in many situations, people are saying, well, projects are too small, complex, or boring, not interesting, so we're not interested in getting involved. Very often it's based on the apathy of facility owners, and there are some reasons for that, as I listed on the right. Rather than read what's there, I'll give you just an anecdote of a situation. 20 years ago, I did a study in Quebec for the creation of an energy efficiency investment fund, and I consulted tens of CFOs and CEOs of public institutions like schools, hospitals, universities, colleges, but also private sector facility owner. And just one example on the reaction I had, this one is from a hospital. The person told me, well, I have a $225 million annual budget. My energy cost is $4 million, which is a mere 1.8% of my budget, which is minuscule compared to my headache. And you're trying to sell me energy efficiency projects and saving 25% of this 1.8%. So you want me to spend time on 0.45% impact on my budget? And the conclusion was, well, why should I care? Which I thought, well, yes, you should care, but if you don't understand it, I mean, it's your own right. But he concluded saying, I have more important things to do and to worry about. And the conclusion was, anyway, and this is quite interesting in the context of regulatory barriers, he says, if I reduce my operation budget by 2 million, the government will cut it next year by 2 million. So what's my incentive in getting involved in energy efficiency projects? That was 20 years ago. Maybe the climate change agenda was not so important as it is today. And I hope that today we have evolved to a point where a public sector manager would not react the way he reacted 20 years ago. And he would say, well, it's 0.5% of my budget, but regardless, it's important for the environment and I need to do something. So hopefully we're getting there. From the bank perspective, on this slide, what you have on the left, no attractive energy efficiency financing. And this one reflects the disconnect that banks have with the financing of energy efficiency projects. Soren alluded to that in his introductory comments, and essentially, generally speaking, banks will provide lending if the facility owner or the client invests 30% of its own capital in a project. So they will limit their lending to 70% of an energy efficiency project capital cost. And they will also request 100% collateral guarantee. And we all know in the energy efficiency sector that the only collateral we have in energy efficiency is the savings. And since the savings is the absence of something, because we're not consuming energy, the collateral that we provide is basically like hot air for a banker. So essentially, banks do not have confidence in savings of energy projects, and they are not interested in increasing their credit capacity to facility owner. They have limited interest in energy efficiency projects because most of the time they are small transactions, complex, and they are not able to evaluate the risk and the benefits. And typically they will offer short-term loans for existing line of credit. So they have no incentive to change the way that they are doing business. So this is the unfortunate situation that historically we've faced. There are challenges also that cannot be addressed at the level of the bank. And essentially those challenges, and mostly the regulations and regulatory challenges, and in the case of ESCOs, for example, if you cannot legally do off-balance sheet projects, this is a barrier, a serious barrier that the banks cannot address. So essentially, there are going to be situations where the financing will not be possible, and this will define the boundaries around which energy efficiency projects can or cannot be financed. But there are a lot of challenges that can be addressed, and they are related mostly to the right side of the slides that I presented on barriers, which is basically based on information. Banks can address the challenge of limited energy efficiency knowledge. They need to get educated, and this is what the IEFP is about as well. Projects are not appealing, small and complex. Again, this is something that they can learn. Projects are not business as usual. Of course, they are not business as usual. I mean, we're trying to get them into a new market that represents thousands of billions of dollars. If I was a bank, I would be interested in that free money that I can access, essentially. Insufficient collaterals, same thing. This can be addressed if they understand the nature of energy efficiency. No confidence in future cash flows, same issue. If we explain and explain and explain again how positive cash flow can be generated from energy efficiency, that could change eventually the picture. This is addressed as well in the IEFP. And of course, the lack of appropriate investment grade audits and technical capacity in the industry or could be also a barrier, but this can be addressed as well by banks and other stakeholders in the industry. So here comes the IEFP. Again, it's a long introduction, but I think it's important to put the context into which this document was developed and how it can be put at use in the energy efficiency sector. The main objective of the IEFP is to create an understanding for local financial institutions, and this is, I want to emphasize that this is really for loan and credit officers and banks. This is not a general public document, although it could be useful, but this is really oriented towards bank understanding energy efficiency. It is designed to enhance the knowledge of those people on how energy efficiency projects can be relied upon for loan repayment, essentially understanding the positive cash flow. how they can evaluate and mitigate the risk as well of energy efficiency projects by getting knowledge of the technologies and what they do and how they can generate, again, this through the performance of those equipments, they can generate positive cash flow. We teach them, or we give guidelines on how to structure project-based loan that minimizes the risks and provide attractive internal rate of returns. And most importantly, from EVO perspective, is how the measurement and verification of energy savings can help them mitigate the risk as well of potential loans. Very quickly on the content, I'm skipping chapter 1 and 2, which are introductory, but you will see here in the next slides the structure of the document. I won't get into the details because it's I don't want to read the slides, but just to give you the general idea of the context, we start the document by providing examples of key energy efficiency technologies that bank officers could be faced with loan applications. We have 9 in the protocol itself. There are more, of course, but these are the most common ones. And for each technology, we present the key aspect of the technology, so what it is, what it does, and we give an idea of the useful life of the technology, so they have an idea of the time that the payback could be applied to. We give an idea of the simple payback for each technology. MNV factor, which is how difficult it is or not to do measurement and verification, and an assessment of the savings risk. So each technology has a table like that in the protocol itself. In chapter 4, we focus on energy efficiency project development and finance process, which is essentially showing credit officers how the project is being built internally in a facility before they arrive at a bank with a loan application. So we're talking about the baseline assessment, then the decision to do an IGA, decision on what they want, what the facility owner want to install in the facility, and so on. So it gives an idea of the work that was done before arriving at the bank or at the financial institution to apply for a loan. We give an idea of what an investment grade audit looks like, what it contains, what it is used for by the stakeholders in the projects. So banks can refer to that and understand what were the hypotheses behind the project costs and so on. Of course, measurement and verification is a key part of the project. So we briefly present, like it's a 2 or 3 pages summary of the IPMVP. Essentially, we explain the 4 options. We explained that in absence of being able to really see the savings, that the MNV is acting as the meter of energy efficiency projects, and we emphasize the importance of an MNV plan as well. Key stakeholders, we explain the role of each stakeholders in a project, from end users, project developers, funders, not-for-profit, product and services provider, energy suppliers. So we give examples of different types of stakeholders and what their role is in a project. So if for example, the not-for-profit organizations are involved in helping for GHG accounting, well, so the bank can see, okay, this is why they are involved in the projects and they have a role, and they play a risk mitigation role as well, and so on. So these kinds of example. Chapter 8, focusing on different financing options, essentially reviewing various options like host equity, loans, leases, infrastructure as a service, and energy services contract. and the role of ESCOs in projects. Followed by Chapter 9, energy efficiency project contracts, different types of contracts like consulting, fee-based, financing agreements, construction and maintenance, ESCO contracts again, and so on. Again, to give an idea of the potential contracts that could be involved in a project. Sorry. And then energy efficiency financing market needs. We explain what the market needs in terms of loan products and credit products for energy efficiency projects. So again, it complements the picture of energy efficiency financing from the bank perspective. And we also give two examples of projects that are with two different levels of debt financing. One at 70%, which is the traditional bank maximum loan, and one which is 100% debt financing. And we illustrate how the cash flow operates in both contexts. Chapter 11, project financing risks and mitigation strategies, focusing on different levels of performance risk and mitigation at the development stage, implementation, operation, and also some contractual risk as well, and how these can be mitigated. And then we have an extended discussion on the ESCO models. Again, we keep introducing the ESCO in the document at various stages, so the banks understand this model. And then we offer a brief presentation on examples of guarantee mechanisms for financial institution. One of them, partial credit guarantee, and energy saving insurance, ESI schemes. We have historical examples, but maybe on the ESI, this is like, let's say, resurrecting, but there is a lot of renewed interest in ESI for energy efficiency projects in South America. I know that in Europe, there was a project financed by NH 2020, not subsidy, yeah, subsidy. So there's renewed interest on that front, which is great. And we end the protocol with various checklists, one on risk mitigation, one on IGA, and one on loan application guidelines. So that's in a nutshell what the IEFP is about. So as you could see, we're essentially introducing different concepts of interest on energy efficiency projects, always from the perspective of educating the bank and loan officers. The document itself takes about 1 hour to read. It's not a Bible. It's not meant to be a reference manual, but it's meant to be a guide on addressing loan applications and understanding what they are. So it's not a training manual or a comprehensive document, as I said, but we do have a training program that we piloted in Canada in 2019 and 20, and in Mexico in 2021, and we're about to do another training in Mexico in collaboration with GIZ and through the NEMA facility. And the course is structured in 3 different components. We have pre-courses, self-taught courses. One of them is an introduction to financial terms used in energy efficiency. And another one is the introduction of energy efficiency technologies, which goes a little bit further than what is being presented in the IEFP itself. I think we have 13 or 14 different technologies in the course, and again, it's self-taught, maybe a couple of hours before attending the core course, which is delivered through 12 training modules over 2 days. And at the end of day 2, Actually, it's 2 days and a half. At the end of day 2, the participants are separated in groups, and they have to prepare a loan application. And the following day, they present their loan application in front of a not a jury, but like we're acting as the bank, and they have to present their loan application, and we're asking questions. So it's really hands-on group exercise, role play. It complements the 2-day training. And we have an advanced cash flow analysis course over 2 days, including a certification exam that will essentially look at cash flow analysis examples of the different technologies that are covered in the Intro to Technology course. So this is the structure of the IEFP. Now, why are we doing it? Well, I mean, I'm personally, I'm a believer in market transformation initiative. We looked earlier at barriers, and very often barriers and market failure are put into, not in contradiction to each other, but we're talking about market barriers and market failure. And I don't think there is a market failure in energy efficiency per se. But there is an efficiency gap, which is obvious to anybody who works in this industry. And the gap is essentially the difference between what is economically feasible in terms of energy efficiency projects and what is actually done or invested. And this efficiency gap, in my view, is almost entirely the result of information gap. And this information gap must be addressed by education. And this is what the IEFP does for bankers. I think it complements a key part of this sector, and we complement that with other M&V activities that we have at EVO. So that's what I call the market transformation pyramid for energy efficiency M&V, or almost even projects. And from our perspective, it starts with M&V awareness webinars like the one we have this morning, one we did in Mexico last week. Essentially, any stakeholders interested in energy efficiency can just sit for an hour and listen to what is M&V, what is energy efficiency financing, how it works, and so on. Then we get to another level, which is a more formal introduction to either M&V or to financing concepts through specific IEFP workshops that usually run for half a day or one full day. And then we get into the certification education. In our case, the Performance Measurement Verification Analyst Program and the IEFP that we developed. We have performance measurement and verification experts, and then advanced and thematics training on different themes like statistics, ISO and IPMVP, and so on. And at the very top, we have the hyper specialists, or what we call the mentors. What's interesting in this picture is what you have on the right. I mean, basically at the lower level of the pyramid, you have a lot of individuals, and as you get higher in the pyramid, you have less and less people, but their level of knowledge is increasingly higher as you get into the pyramid. And I think the IEFP was really a missing piece in terms of this whole education structure in the energy efficiency market transformation process. And this is what the protocol is doing, and the training program. So hopefully it's going to be of interest to many of you. Now, in concluding remarks, there are many reasons why financial institutions need to know the protocol. I think the most obvious one is what I discussed at the beginning, is I think the sustainable finance will be there. It will not disappear. And with billions of dollars required to do energy efficiency projects, banks must be involved, and they must show what they must understand what's going on. The energy efficiency is one of the primary mitigation for decarbonation, no doubt about that. So one good reason for banks to care, but they need to understand the technical details, need to understand the technical language of energy efficiency. And again, this is exactly what the IEFP is doing. It's taking a banker and in 2 days, giving them enough knowledge to understand what this business is all about, and so on. So there are many, many reasons. I put 10 on this slide. I could have put 15. And I guess the last one is from EVO is important, that MNV will force technology providers to become more professional, and which is very, very important for the performance of projects. For those interested in participating in the effort of the IEFP, we have a technical committee that is led by Livia Mittier-Moret from BASE. She accepted the chair position this week or late last week. We have a number of people in that committee, but we would really like to expand participation through many, many, many countries and regions across the world, so we can beef up this program and discuss how we can disseminate its content. So that's it, I guess, on my part. So if there are any questions, I'm going to be very happy to address them.
Many thanks, Denis. That was extremely interesting. Also, deeming from the questions that we have received in the chat. The chat is still open, so please continue submitting your questions. Denis, if you would switch on your camera, I would switch on mine as well. So we get a bit more personal now that your presentation is over.
Mine is on, but it's probably that
Camera's on?
Yeah, it is, I think.
I have a different view here on my screen, but anyway,
okay, let's see.
Our webmaster will tell us if we need to do something else than we have done already. Let's jump to the questions. First, the question here: if can the IEFP standardized concepts be extended to adoption of energy efficiency measures in the maritime industry?
Sure. I mean, it's again, it's I mean, it's guideline for financing projects for people who will provide the funds. So wherever the funds are going to be affected, the people who will approve the loans or provide the loans, they must understand what energy efficiency is about, and that's what we're doing. But again, it's not an extended document on specific situations, but it gives direction as to, okay, you're interested in financing this type of project in this type of industry. Here's the basis, and it gives you an idea, okay, go there to get more information. So it's really a guiding document, not a Bible itself, but it could be used in any sector as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thanks. Here's another question, which says it was clear that the need of local financial institutions drove the development of the IEFP application and training program. Can you confirm that the IEFP concepts are intended not only to arm the bank credit and loan officers, but also other non-bank funders such as equity investments or super ESCOs?
Yes, that's a good question, and the answer is yes, obviously. Interestingly enough, when we did the pilot projects in Canada and in Mexico, the participants to the training, we had about 25 participants in each case, and we had ESCO, we had government officials, we had utilities, we had banks, we had funds, private funds, and clients as well as part of the crowd. And it became very interesting when we got into the role play situation at the end of day 2 and when they were preparing the loan application, because these people who are not used to talk to each other were talking to each other around an energy efficiency projects. And they were using the different hints and things that they had learned in the previous 2 days in terms of risk mitigations and things like that. So definitely, yeah, it applies to all project funders, whether banks or even governments or utilities or anybody who wants to have an understanding of who does what in energy efficiency projects and how does that work and how can I make money out of it, essentially.
All right. I unfortunately don't have the benefit of seeing who is asking the question. So whatever needs a follow up, those who ask may also address us by email just to follow up the questions. But the questions are interesting for all participants. So here is a question. Could we not use the SDG 7 in order to link projects to your current efforts? The one who poses the question has, sorry, yeah, go on.
No, I missed the first part. Link what to the?
I couldn't hear you, Denny.
No, I said I missed the first part of the question, like linking what to the IEFP?
Could we not use SDG 17 in order to link projects to your current efforts? And the one who's asking the question has a project proposal for Mexico, which could be well suited for learning while doing. That may be well timed with your ongoing efforts in Mexico and other members of the UNLSC and UNECE. I think this requires a direct question to you, Denis, by email, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, that's yes. Please, that person who has the question, send me an email, and I'm going to be pleased to explore the possibilities to work together.
Good. And another question here is, what role will the IEFP play where fintech products, which are tailored to the needs of borrowers, will drive the lending? Is there any example of EFP being integrated into a fintech product?
That's a good question. Again, I mean, this is something that we can explore. And I apologize if I don't have a lot of specific answers to specific questions, because this is fairly new for us. So when we resurrected the protocol, our goal was to get involved in the financial discussion from an M&V perspective, but also from an energy efficiency perspective. And since we've done that 2 years ago, we're kind of going in all directions, and we see that it spreads in areas that we could not clearly see beforehand. So, I mean, my first reaction to yes, it could apply or be interesting for fintech financing, but we need to look at details and maybe adapt the product. Particularly on the learning side, like the training, we could have specific training on specific products that we could develop.
And to follow up on that training, would you have any plans to do any training in India, maybe?
We would love to. The only thing we need to do a training in a specific country is the development of a country annex. And essentially the country annex, as I said earlier, is presenting or addressing issues like off-balance sheet financing for ESCOs, for example. What are the local banking regulations that would limit EE financing by banks and so on. So as soon as we have this annex, because it's part of the training itself. So there is a core training, which is about 80% applicable around the world, and the balance 20% at the end of the training is really country specific, and this is based on the country annex. So if we can develop a country annex, we can deploy the training in any country. India, and we're working on Tunisia. I give you that example. But yes, if the person who asked the question has clue as to where we should go to develop the country annex, and very often we're talking about maybe banking associations that could be part of this initiative. That would be great because they get involved in the projects from day one, and then they are the ones who benefit from the training itself. So definitely, yeah.
Good, and there are more questions here also regarding the specific training in Mexico. I think the answer for those would be to contact you directly, Denis, on how possibly to get involved or be part of that training. So please, you who are interested in that, address Denis directly by email.
Sure.
Another question here, which is, and I think you already have addressed that already, Denis. And there are countries that need this education more than others. So how do we make sure that those countries are addressed? Would that be a bottom-up approach, as you would like to do this for those countries that are interested in having it developed, but you are not developing it top-down?
Top-down in what sense? I just want to make sure that I understand.
You don't decide the countries that you want to develop this the education programs for. It's more a demand driven.
Oh yeah, it's demand driven. Yeah, it's demand driven. If, as I said, ideally the demand is either driven by an existing project like the one in Mexico was driven by GIZ and through an EMA facility for small and medium enterprises. In Canada, it was driven by, well, Canada is an exception because it was fun. It was driven by EVO because the government of Canada financed the update of the IEFP. But in Tunisia, our goal is to work with the Banking Association of Tunisia. So we can either develop it ourselves, but ideally it's demand driven by specific countries or stakeholders in a country that could drive this project along with us.
Very well. We are at the top of the hour, or in fact a half hour, but we are reaching the end of the webinar. There's only one last question that I would like to ask you, Denis. How well is this IEFP being received by the financial institutions, and how do we get them to read it?
The feedback we've got in Mexico last year was extremely good from financial institutions. And how do we get them to read it? It's available for free on our website. People just need to register with a free account, and then they can download the document. But in terms of dissemination, I am available to make presentations in whatever context people may think of in front of banks, bank associations, or any other groups. And we can even distribute the document directly to interested parties. So again, it's free from our website. People can download it and distribute it and make good use of it. And contact us whenever in doubt. So we'll be happy to assist.
Excellent. And contact details are on our website of the Global ESCO Network website. Both Denis and I am there. The recording of this webinar will also be available, if not tomorrow, then sometime next week. We normally edit them a bit before making them public. So please check our website for this webinar and all the former webinars that we have been doing on different topics related to ESCOs. I apologize for those questions that we might not have been able to answer in this hour, but I thank you, Denis, very much for your presentation, and all of you out there for joining our webinar today. We look forward to seeing you at future webinars from the Global ESCO Network. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah.